Hey guys, Inorganic Pixel here, playing the Scout.
I wanted to talk a bit about the $80 video game. We are now entering a new paradigm of gaming where we can all expect video games to cost $80. I guess, by the way, it's also kind of up in the air in terms of what exactly is going to cost $80. I'm not sure if Nintendo has even finalized what their new console is going to cost or what those games are going to cost. And this is all kind of stemming from, I guess tariffs and also from the overall economy as a whole. Randy, what really made me want to make this video was specifically Randy Pitchford making a comment, and he's just the antichrist of gaming. He's basically the opposite of what Gabe Newell is. He's responsible for all the really shitty crap that is, plagues the modern day gaming industry. But he is part of that ecosystem still, and I don't want to take away all of his valor. He is responsible, for helping with the Borderlands games and Duke Nukem. But overall, his comments around the $80 games and the true fans will pay for the $80 game. Honestly, I agree with him. I think he's right. I think people are willing to pay $80 for a video game. Gamers are willing just to pay for that experience. People laughed when TF2 first announced that they were going to sell virtual hats. And, time has gone on and it's a multi-million-dollar industry. Cosmetics as a whole, was kind of that phase that we had for, I want to say, like the 2010s up to the 2020s, the early 2020s of gaming, where that was kind of the main driving factor, the economic force for, what made these video games profitable for, game developers and studios. And I know everyone likes to assume that we're all playing video games and making video games for the love of the game, and we're all so passionate about the art of gaming. And when I tweet the devs slurs, it's because I'm actually helping the art of gaming. But let's be honest, the reality is everyone's trying to do this to make money. People want to afford to live, and I want that as much as the next person. I want every game studio, no matter the game that they make, for the most part, to be profitable. I want them to be able to sustain that business. I want them to, I want people to be able to put food on the table, and with this whole push to $80, it's it's gonna kind of separate the lions from the lambs a bit for a lot of game studios, even for potentially even gamers. To be honest with you, though, I just don't really think I care. I'm not the type of guy who buys $80 games or buys $60 games or games on launch or when a game first comes out to get that premium care package drop. Who cares? Whatever. The XP bonus for playing when the game comes out. I honestly don't care, and I'd be very surprised if a majority of gamers cared either. I think with the push for the increase in cost for games and everything, is gamers are gonna have to ask themselves, is it worth me putting this amount of money into this hobby like I have been historically? Am I really gonna need to buy the new game when it comes out on launch, or can I wait for at least when that new first day patch comes out that fixes a lot of the issues of the game? Or can I wait a few months or so to get through the backlog of other games that I have? And it's not like games are hard to come by either. People are literally throwing away games for free. Epic, for example, just gave away Sifu. And I've gotten tons of games for free from Epic and games for dirt cheap on Steam. I'm just curious as to if other people feel the same way about this. I personally don't really think the whole price increase thing matters a whole lot to a lot of gamers. And for the ones that it does matter a whole lot, I really would question that. How many gamers do you know actually have a Steam library with only 3 games that they can play, with no options to play the free game and whatever? Like it or not, gaming is a luxury commodity. This is not something that you absolutely need to have to survive. And there's so many options essentially now if you wanted to game on a budget or even just play like the newest, latest, greatest thing that came out, or on your new top of line PC. I really want to take this time maybe in this video to kind of encourage whoever's watching really to think about their dollar a bit harder when it comes to this hobby, when it comes to video games, when it comes to really just anything in general that you're passionate about. I understand that it sucks that this hobby is now becoming a little bit more expensive. And for me personally, the thing that I'm worried the most about is how that's going to really drive a divide a lot harder into the game development side of things. I really do think we're heading towards more or less, and similar to how this is happening economically speaking with, with just like, middle class and everything. I think the middle class game developer, if you will, that middle tier game developer, the guy who potentially makes like a licensed game or whatever, is now going to have a harder time moving forward, unfortunately, because when these kinds of things happen economically, when it happens to like housing, when it happens to like finances or banking or stocks and investments, typically that gap between the middle class or the middle guy gets harder and smaller and smaller and smaller, and the little guys and the bigger guys gets wider and wider and wider. That's good, I think, and bad in some cases. I guess it'll be determined how that will be in the case of, for video games specifically. I just think that a few things when it comes to an $80 game that are going to have to be addressed for sure from these big AAA developers. If they're not, I mean, it's going to be crazy to see how gamers will swallow that pill. But, number one, I mean, these games have to come out finished now, I think. The excuse used to be that, well, you're paying $60, we're going to update it over time. Bro, I think now if you're making a AAA game and it has bugs or issues on launch or problems where the microtransactions are so aggressive to the point where it becomes a pay-to-win type of situation, that's not going to fly anymore. I really hope that gamers are going to be strong-willed enough to not let that fly as much as they used to in the past. I obviously know there are cases where, like, the rights were wronged in certain ways, like, No Man's Sky, people paid $60 for that game, and then it came out really half-baked at launch, but, over time got fixed and whatnot. I don't think that's going to be an excuse anymore now moving forward. It really shouldn't be, especially now with the price of this hobby going up. Number two, I think the push for cosmetics and DLC really needs to be streamlined a lot more now. At least I hope that gamers will not allow the aggressive gouging of cosmetics to be so pervasive in games. Looking at you, Call of Duty, looking at games like this engineer got me so hard. I was so mad when that happened. Looking at you, Call of Duty, looking at games like Overwatch, games like Fortnite, I think we're going to have to kind of see, if we are going to pay a full entry fee now to play these games, like a Call of Duty, for example, I really don't know if you can get away with now charging an absurd price for a lot of those cosmetics. But honestly, people are willing to pay for them. I've paid for cosmetics in this game, but granted, in my defense, though, I've also paid the really cheapo depot version of getting cosmetics in this game. See the rest of my videos for what I'm talking about. That's kind of the beauty of TF2 as well, is that TF2 was really one of the first games to really push the whole cosmetic thing within gaming, and I think it did it the best, and also did it in a way where it was not as egregious as what we might be used to now. Number three, also, I don't know if we could really anticipate to see that schedule for games like a FIFA, like a Call of Duty, the annual release game, the Maddens, the sports games, the Driver 2026 whatever games that come out. I imagine stuff is going to have to change on that end, at least economically speaking, or even just consumer practice wise. There's no way people are really... who knows, though? People might be willing to pay another $80 just to play the new Madden. I imagine, though, if that is the case, if I was a Madden gamer, if I was a guy who played those games, I would really anticipate that. I would really want to see, my dollar be stretched a bit further now that I'm paying $80 in terms of the value that I'm getting out of those games and whatnot. Maybe cut down on the ads that appear in the Madden game. And I think the last thing also is that, people who make these games, I'm hoping that with these now costing $80, we do see that the developers, the artists, the people who actually get behind the wheel and actually put pen to paper and develop what you see here today. I'm hoping those guys get paid more and get treated a bit better. That was a big pervasive issue throughout the 2010s, that era of gaming. I'm going to refer to it as the cosmetic era, where it was just constant overworking, over pushing, constant crunch time hour bullshit that happened with those with the people who worked for those games. And I'm hoping that goes away, or I'm hoping that is going to be alleviated a little bit with this $80 push. But I mean, to get cynical here, to get really cynical, let's be honest. Like, they're jacking up the price of these games because shareholder value, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about just generating more shareholder value, and who cares who we run over to get that? And that is just the way it goes, I guess. Unfortunately, who knows if time? Who knows if things will change over time to prevent that? With the inflation of games like this, though, I really do worry. Going back to what I was saying a minute ago about the middle guy, the average Joe Schmo game developer studio. Not indie. Indie is its own separate jar of worms and everything, and AAA obviously is its own whole different world, and there's obviously outliers for each example that you might be thinking of when I say indie or AAA devs, but I really worry that this is going to hurt the middle guy a lot, and I really want there to be a middle ground for game development. I really like the fact that there are maybe not AAA size studios, but AA size studios. And I guess what really also made me push to record and make this video and even talk about what I'm talking about now is a lot of the stuff that's been happening with the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre update. They just had their last update for that game, which just boiled down to being a bunch of bug fixes and everything. To my understanding, it's their last update. Who knows? That could change. With God knows what will happen there. But they're a middle tier size studio. They're not AAA. They're not indie or whatever. I think the CEO of that company has even labeled themselves as a AA studio, and I would agree with that to an extent. And the game Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a lot of fun. I bought that game full price for $40. I even bought a lot of the DLC for it. As a consumer, that's where I felt my value. It's where my dollar was being stretched, and that's what I wanted. They're ending their service for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and no one really knows why. But if I had to take a wild guess, it has to do with money, right? It has to do with the fact that it's getting more and more expensive to possibly make these games, or the return on investment for that game was not as great to continue the service for it. Who knows? I could be totally wrong. I could be talking out my ass here, but I want there to be a world where those AAA or those middle tier development studios exist. That's how you get games like for example, Texas Chainsaw is an example, as I mentioned. You get games like from studios like Studio 51. You get like games that are multiplayer genre focused that might not be as big of a crowd as a AAA, Call of Duty, as a Battlefield, like a FIFA or whatever, and it's also not small enough like a Nubby's Number Factory or Strafftat. But I think it's important to have that middle ground. That middle ground is where a lot of those little studios grow to become larger ones. Like Valve, for example. Valve at one point was that little middle guy studio that existed, and look where they're at now. I know Valve's an extreme example, but it's an example nonetheless. And I like the games that come from those kinds of studios as well sometimes. Those are a lot of great memories with games like No More Heroes, or games like the Texas Chainsaw, and other ones who I can't think of on the top of my head because I probably should have scripted this part of the video a bit more. But it's all a big wait and see, though. I think gaming as a whole is still so dynamic, is still so elusive and new as a genre or as a medium, that we're still trying to figure out how to monetize it effectively and for the long term. I think some studios and some gaming companies have figured it out, like Valve. Of course, Valve in their in that example is kind of a bit of a dark horse. Not everyone can make a Steam and then make an infinite money glitch with Steam. So I don't know. I guess, it's a big wait and see. Who knows? This could be a positive thing. Maybe gaming is one of those really rare instances where having a indie scene that's so large and pervasive. The amount of indie games that do well. I know Baloptra is an example where that's a great case study for an indie game that does well and smashes all the records and does great. But be honest with yourself. There's also tons of garbage indie games out there. And then for the AAA guys, I mean, there's clearly enough of an audience for them to keep making those AAA games. It's just I wish they weren't as like, you know, parasitic when it comes to how they market them and also how they develop them and everything. But yeah, I guess that's really the video here. I'm just kind of rambling a bit. TF2 is one of those great games. I think that is a great dissection of that space. And I don't know. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Do you guys care if games are now $80 now? Do you guys care at all? Do you think that that could lead to bigger issues down the road? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Bye.